Hello, this is teddygaming and welcome back to another video. And in today's one, we're going to be looking at how Donatello met one of the 13 monsters in the tmnt 2007 prequel comics. Now, these prequel comics were really interesting and took one character and explored some really interesting ideas in these comics as well as other issues, and then later explored them in the movies. Now, this issue explored Donatello as well as some really interesting things that happened with the 13 monsters, which are really interesting, but when you look into it a little bit more, it doesn't really go that well. Okay, so with the story itself, we do get to see Master Splinter in the dojo. He's reading some scrolls and that's when the power goes out. So he goes to Donatello to try and see if he can fix it, and this is when he discovers that Donatello's building a machine. Now this machine is more or less using it to basically find species, and one of the reasons why I want to use it is just so that he can locate like different aliens or species in case they come to Earth. One example that it does use is the Triceratons come to Earth again, which I must admit I do find really interesting with how much they reference the Triceratons and use them in this series, just because there was supposed to be a villain for, I think it was the third movie for this series when it got made, but also they were used in issue number 1 of the series, so I do find that really interesting with how much they're being used. Now on this map we do get to see Mikey is doing a carbon coal somewhere, and that's when he shows Master Splinter 3 different dogs, which is Donatello, Raphael, Master Splinter, all in the lair. And then that's when things get really interesting, as we do get to see another blip that comes up on the screen, and it is one of the 30 monsters. Now this monster is the bat that we do get to see in the movie, that's the one that Casey and Raph chase, and yeah. So that's when Master Splinter and Donatello do decide to go out to go after this bat, and they do discover that it's flying, it's moving really fast, and they go over to the building where he was originally. Now Master Splinter and Donatello do arrive at the building, and it's a really interesting scene, just because at first they don't discover the bat, and that's when the bat shows up and actually starts to attack them, and this is where things get really interesting, just because Donatello actually defends himself and actually hits the bat on his head, and then that's when things get really interesting, as the bat actually talks back to Donatello and says, "Damn you." But then that's when things take a unique turn, and we do get to see the bat takes Donatello and flies away with him. So Master Splinter goes back to Michelangelo, and we do get to see Michelangelo's watching TV, and on this TV is news talking about how the Night Watcher saved some people from a burning building. So Master Splinter comes back home, and he goes over to Raphael's room, tries to recruit him, but it turns out that he's not there. I can only imagine that he's probably out saving those people, so it's understandable why he's not there. After this, we do get to see Master Splinter go over to Michelangelo and more or less recruits him for the mission. They gear up, and I must admit, with this art style, with how Master Splinter and Mikey look, I must admit they do look really cool with all the actual weapons, gear and stuff like that. It looks really cool and interesting. So then after that, we do get to see Master Splinter and Michelangelo running through the sewers, through the city, and I must admit, it all looks really cool and really great. And that's when they head over to the docks, and it's an interesting scene, just because the two of them head into the building first, and they do it very silently, and do get to see Donatello communicating with the bat, and it's really interesting for a few really interesting reasons. So one, Donatello is trying to communicate with him, and he does somewhat understand what the bat is trying to do and trying to say, but the bat is talking in a weird language, which I do find weird, just because earlier in this comic he does speak English saying "damn you." However, here he's speaking in a weird language that you can't really describe or really translate. So I find that really weird that he can't talk normally now. So yeah. But after this, we do get to see the bat notices Michelangelo and Master Splinter and starts to attack them. And this fight doesn't really go on too long, and the bat flies away, and that's pretty much where the main story ends. However, things take a unique turn, and we do get to see the bat flying past Raphael in a Night Watcher suit, which I find that to be really interesting, just showing off more than Night Watcher, which is just great. And then we do get to see the bat flies over Max Splinter's tower with him smiling, which I find weird, interesting, and I don't really know what to really make of this scene, just because it's Max Splinter's looking at it, and I think that because of what they were trying to do with the movie and stuff like that, it does work well. But I do think without the knowledge you have with Max Winters and his connection to the monsters, this scene wouldn't make sense, but I do think that because I do have the knowledge already, it does make a lot of sense, and it's interesting, I'd say. And then for the final scene, we do get to see Donatello upgrades his machine, and that's when he discovers that there's only 30 monsters in the city, which I must admit is really interesting. However, the machine breaks, and that's pretty much it for the story. Now, this issue overall is pretty interesting for a few different reasons. So the first one is the art style, and I must admit it is just great. With Jim Lawson coming back and doing the artwork for this one, it is just amazing. I don't really know what else to really say about it. It's just, yeah, it's Jim Lawson. But at the same time, I feel as though that with his art style, I don't think it works too well with this version of Turtles. Now, as I said before, that I do think that Jim Lawson has a really great art style for the Turtles, and it works really well. However, I feel as though that when you do translate his art style for other versions of the Turtles, when we do already have a very distinct art style, his art style doesn't really work too well for the issues as well as the comics and stuff like that. And I do think that it doesn't really work too well, but I think his artwork is great, but not for already other versions that have their distinct art style. But I do think that with the overall story with Donatello and the 13 monsters, I do think that's where things start to really break down for this whole story. Just because the more you look into this and the more you look into the movie, the more you can really tell that this one didn't really work too well for the movie itself. Just because you do get to see Donnie interacting with the monsters, but then in the movie he's really surprised with Bigfoot and stuff like that. So I don't really know why he's surprised in the movie when he sees the monster, even though he's just seen this bat creature here. And then another thing is that with this scene here with him interacting with the bat, I don't understand why he never really thought to go after the bat again, or he ever really decided to go and create the device again to go after find all the monsters. I just think that this issue really presented quite a few good reasons why the story could have been better, and I feel that with these ideas that they do present in the issue, they're really great ones that I think that should have been expanded upon in the movie, but because they don't really ever expand upon in the movie, we haven't mentioned them ever again, and so just make it feel as though that this whole issue didn't really happen. It just makes this whole story feel really stupid in a way for quite a few different reasons, which I don't really know how I really feel about it, just because I think that it's a great story and great issue, but I think that because they never really do anything with the stuff that I do in this issue ever again, it makes it stupid and weird. So yeah, that's pretty much how Donatello met one of the 13 monsters. Now in the next issue we'll be talking about how April became an archaeologist and stuff like that, which I must admit is a pretty interesting one for a few different reasons, and you know, I'll say there's a few scenes in there that may not be child friendly-ish, but we'll get into that one when we do get talk about that issue. So yeah, let me know in the comment section below what you think about this story and stuff like that. But yeah, that's gonna be it for today guys. If you just want, please share, let's subscribe and all that stuff. Goodbye, yo, bye.